Could everyone please take their seats? We're going to get started very quickly here. Again?
No problem. Don't worry.
Okay, this time I really mean it. We're about to start. Please, everyone, take your seats. We have a real treat for you to start off the event, so you'll want to hear this.
Joyful, joyful, we adore the God of glory, Lord of love. Hearts unfold like flowers before the opening to the song. And bow. Melt the clouds of sin and sadness, drive the dark of doubt away. Give our immortal gladness, fill us with the light of day. All the works with joy surround the earth and heavens join the happy chorus which the morning stars begun. Father, love is reigning o'er us, brother, love is man to man, ever singing march the onward victors in the midst of strife. Joyful music leads us somewhat in the trio song of life. Song of life.
Thank you so much to Advantage Project, this Ukrainian band, which once again showed us how Ukrainians can blow our minds with their creativity. And thanks also to all of you who are joining us here for the Global Europe Forum, whether you're here with us in the European Parliament in Brussels or tuning in online as we are broadcasting this live. I'm Terry Schultz. I'm going to be your moderator for today, promising you thought-provoking discussion for the afternoon. We all know we need to have it, the way 2026 is shaping up so far. So Ukraine was not invited here by accident. Renew Europe very much wanted to start this event by reminding us all how central Ukraine is to Europe's security and defense. And not only that, but how much they are already part of the European family, culturally, emotionally, spiritually, and if Renew Europe and other advocates have their way, of course, it will also be a full member of the European Union as soon as possible. So that is certainly something that is going to be in our minds today as we continue our discussions throughout the afternoon on how to make Europe safer, how to protect democracy, how to improve the democracy that we have to protect. And once again, I am very pleased to welcome you here on that beautiful note. And now to bring to the stage the president of Renew Europe, Valérie Ayé, who will really get us started. Thank you.
Thank you, dear Terry, dear colleagues, dear guests, dear friends. Thank you for coming in such large numbers and welcome to the first event organized by the Renew Europe group this year. First of all, as is customary, but no less sincere, I would like to wish you all the best for the new year. I wish you all happiness and good health. And above all, I hope that we don't lose our way in 2026. This may sound like a joke, but the risk is real. The risk is real in a world that seems to become increasingly deregulated, where alliances are being called into question, where some prefer the use of force and brutality over diplomacy, where the internet is a battlefield that begins in the privacy of our homes and influences even the ballot box. Let's not lose our way. Let's not lose sight of the ultimate goal of our European history, which is peace and freedom for all peoples. Let's not lose our values and principles, particularly our belief in a multilateral order governed by international law. But in the midst of this prevailing gloom, where the urge to over-engage in self-criticism is very present, let's not lose sight of our strengths, our assets, and our weapons either. The European Union is an economic power a political power, a military power. Not only do we not say this enough, but worse still, we forget it, and even sometimes we internalize in our own discourse the criticisms thrown at us by our enemies. So yes, we must do better, do more, do bigger, do stronger on many issues. Yes, the Draghi report should already have been implemented in its entirety. Yes, we must invest heavily in our independence and sovereignty. 1,000 times yes. And you will always find the Renew Europe group to be a demanding and constructive partner in this regard. But despite all the flaws of our union, let's not forget that we are a highly attractive market of 450 million consumers, a market on which even the United States depends. Let's not forget that we have legislative weapons that enable us to defend our values and economic interests, such as the DSA, the DMA, and the anti-coercion tool. And let's not forget that tomorrow it is through our power of sanctions that we will be able to strike a harder blow against the mullahs regime and support the Iranian People's Revolution. Let's not forget our strengths. We are free to speak our minds. And for that reason, it is our responsibility to be the voice of the people fighting for their freedom in Ukraine, in Georgia, dear Salome, Belarus, Palestine, Israel, Venezuela, or Iran. This dual observation, on one hand, of a world that is changing and breaking free from the foundations of multilateralism, and on the other hand, of our inability to want to be powerful, could be fatal to us. But at Renew Europe, we don't believe in fatalism. On the contrary, we believe in the power of action and change. And that's why we are gathered here today to discuss the theme of freedom on the offensive. I'm counting on our discussions to turn observations into proposals. So on behalf of the Renew Europe group, I'm honored by the presence of all our guests today. I'm honored that President Salome Zourabishvili is with us today to echo. Thank you, Salome. Thank you, President. To echo the ongoing fight of the Georgian people for democracy and holding free elections. And I'm honored by the presence of all our guests, of course, Mark Rutte, Michael McGrath, Camille Grand, Robert Andresak, and Marietje Schaake, whom I welcome back to Parliament. I would like to thank them all, as well as my colleagues, Marie-Agnes Strack-Zimmermann and Nathalie Loiseau, who will lead the discussions. And without further ado, I'm delighted to hand over the microphone to open this day of reflection to someone who, in his previous capacity, has been a great and long-standing leader of the Renew Europe family, and whom, in his new role, we are still very lucky to call a friend and an ally. Of course, I'm calling Secretary General of NATO, Mark Rutte. Please, Mark.
Thank you so much. I can start? Yes, sure.
Thanks.
Well, great to be here and to see so many people I know so well. Good to see you, madam. How are you doing? Pleasure to see you. I hope you're fine. And of course, Terry, who will lead us later in the debate. And of course, you, Madam President, dear Valerie, thank you for your very warm welcome. And let me start by saying that it is always a pleasure to be on this side of town, to be at the European Parliament. This is my first public speaking engagement this year. And it is very meaningful to have this conversation with you, with the members of Parliament. At the NATO summit in The Hague last summer, we decided to make our deterrence and defense a priority. We agreed a plan, as you know, to invest 5% of GDP annually in defense by 2035, with 3.5% on core defense and 1.5% on defense and security-related issues. Yes, that is a lot of money, but it is what is required to build our armed forces and buy the capabilities those forces need to protect us. And here we are talking about battle tanks, fighter jets, ships, long-range missiles and ammunition, but also artificial intelligence, cyber defense, space capabilities, and of course, much more. In The Hague, we also agreed to speed up defense production and innovation. And this is, of course, about re-energizing our industries across Europe and North America, so that they step up supply. There are certainly business opportunities for our industries. But it is more than that. There are real benefits for all of us. Because when supply goes up, the result is more security, more economic growth, and also many more jobs. The defense dividend is real. I know, and you all know, that getting to this famous 5% and accelerating production requires hard work and tough decisions from all of us, all our nations and all your constituents. But we need to do it. And we need to do it basically for two reasons. One, because the security situation demands it. We need to be honest. The dangers we face are real, and the dangers we face are lasting. Russia remains our most significant threat. Putin's war machine is churning out military equipment around the clock. And Moscow is testing us through cyber attacks, sabotage, and more. And there's no reason to believe Russia's pattern of aggressive and reckless actions will change anytime soon. On the contrary, Russia is seeking long-term confrontation. And it is not alone. Russia is working with China, with Iran, and North Korea. And these countries fuel Moscow's war against Ukraine. And together, they are attempting to undermine our stability and security. At the same time, the threat from terrorism persists and instability remains rampant in NATO's southern neighborhood. The second reason why we need to deliver on the 5% is that the time when we conveniently let the United States carry the burden for our security is over. The US is absolutely committed to NATO, but this commitment comes with a clear and long-standing expectation that Europe and Canada take more responsibility for their own security. And I believe that is only fair. So 5% must be the direction of travel. There's basically no time to waste. Ensuring allies step up and speed up efforts on defense will remain my and NATO's absolute priority as we prepare for the next summit, which will take place in Ankara in Turkey in July. Then Ukraine, which clearly is still a huge priority. Because, as we all know, our security is inextricably linked to Ukraine's security. Just last week, I was at the Coalition of the Willing meeting in Paris, where leaders discussed how we can support and secure the future for Ukraine. It was a constructive meeting, where we had concrete discussions on robust security guarantees for Ukraine, and where Europe and the US affirmed their readiness to provide such guarantees to secure Ukraine after a peace deal with Russia. Meanwhile, NATO continues to support Ukraine every day, and we do that in various ways, including through the Pearl Initiative, which supplies vital US equipment, including air defense, which is particularly vital these days, for Ukraine to protect its people and hold the front line, paid for by allies. Regardless of when this war ends, our support to Ukraine will continue to be important to ensure a lasting peace. After all, the Ukrainian armed forces will remain the first line of defense. Supporting Ukraine and keeping our own people safe is not a job that NATO does alone. It is a team effort, and the European Union is an essential player. The partnership between NATO and the EU is growing stronger every day, and that is exactly what we need. Because when we combine our strength of NATO and the EU, we can more effectively tackle the many challenges we face. And as you know, 23 nations, members of the EU, are also allies in NATO. And working together, we keep Ukraine strong today and able to defend itself against any aggression in the future. And working together, we can produce more defense capabilities, and we can produce them faster. We can innovate better and outsmart our competitors. Now is not the time to go it alone. And it's not the time to create barriers between us that would increase costs, complicate production, and hamper innovation. Instead, we need to leverage our respective strengths even more. NATO is strong at standard setting and capability targets that are informed by our defense plans. NATO has a strong command and control force structure. And the European Union has all the tools of the internal market at its disposal. And of course the convening power to bring together the member states in the EU, so to make sure that the money is there to invest in defense. So we complement each other. And yes, it is undeniable that Russia, China, North Korea and Iran are aligning more and more. And they are challenging us. But they are only starting to understand what partnership really means. We are miles ahead. We can build on decades of friendship between our organizations and between our nations on both sides of the Atlantic. And we can build on the growing partnerships with countries around the world. And that is an incredible advantage. Let's ensure we retain it. I'll certainly play my part, and I count on you, and I know I can, to play yours. So thank you very much, and I look forward to our discussions. Thank you so much.
Which one do you like? There you go. Oh, you want okay. There's your mic.
Great.
Thank you.
Thank you.
You have to drink water. Okay. So, Mr. Secretary General, I know some things are going well for you. And I would just point out, I've covered NATO almost 20 years, so we're kind of the same in that we kind of just hang around and keep our jobs and hope for the best. But you know I have to ask this. You mentioned don't go it alone, don't create fractures where none are needed. We cannot avoid the question, the problem that has been created with President Trump's claims on Greenland. The Greenlandic government yesterday stated again they want their security to be determined by NATO, to be inside NATO. So this is going to be on your plate, even if you wish it weren't. And you said yesterday that it is not a crisis. So I would like to know what word you would use to describe what's happening now and how you can possibly explain that security inside the alliance is enhanced in any way by the US claims that they need to own Greenland, not just maybe boost their presence, but actually own the island. Can you just unpack that for us? It's really what's on everybody's minds here.
Well, let me start by saying that it was Donald Trump, the American president, who already, when he was Trump 45, so his previous presidency between 2016 and 2020, was making us aware collectively of the need to protect the High North in the Arctic. As you know, we have 8 High North countries in the Arctic. 1 is Russia, outside NATO, and 7 are inside NATO. That's Canada and the US. And then in Europe, it is Denmark through Greenland, and Iceland, Finland, Norway, and Sweden. These 7 countries are basically bordering on the Arctic. And it was President Trump in his first term, as I said, who basically alerted us to the fact that sea lanes are opening up, that Russia and China are more active, and that we have to do more there together. We had a very good discussion in NATO. It was around summer. We are now taking next steps to build on that, because we all agree in NATO, we all agree that when it comes to the protection of the Arctic, we have to work together. And that's exactly what we are doing. Then, of course, I'm never commenting when there are discussions between allies. That's not up for me to comment on, but I can assure you that there is complete agreement that when it comes to the assessment of the urgency of the security situation, not only in the Baltic Sea, not only on the eastern flank, but also in the Arctic and in the southern neighborhood, obviously also. But now, concentrating on the Arctic, we all work together.
Okay, but I really asked about Greenland specifically. Is there any single ally who would support the US forcibly taking Greenland?
Again, what we are discussing here is to make sure that the Arctic is safe, that we have 7 countries working together, including the United States. So we came together in NATO, in the North Atlantic Council. As you know, we work together as the ambassadors, and sometimes it is in the formation of foreign ministers or defense ministers, or the leaders when it is a summit. We call that the North Atlantic Council, a bit like you have the European Council in Europe. And the North Atlantic Council came together at the level of the ambassadors and decided that we have to step up collectively. We all agree on this, and when it comes now to the next steps, we also all agree that we have to take those next steps, and we are working on that diligently at the moment.
And Denmark did this. I mean, over the last year, it spent $14 billion additional dollars, including on defense for Greenland specifically. It has enhanced its missile defense. It's got new Arctic vessels. It's really spent a lot of money and put a lot of time, perhaps acknowledging that it should have been done earlier. You know, this is something that allies can agree on, but I still have to come back to the point: how would Arctic security be enhanced if the U.S. invaded Greenland?
But again, and therefore my role is to make sure that the alliance as a whole is doing what is necessary to keep the whole of the alliance safe. And you're totally right on Denmark. Denmark is investing in Boeing P-8s. Denmark is investing in long-range drones.
Surveillance planes for those non-NATO people?
Yeah, they are also investing in more F-35s, and they are investing in air-to-air refueling. And all these capabilities you need, not only to keep Denmark safe, to keep NATO as a whole safe, but also to make sure that when it comes to the Arctic region, and for them, of course, a special priority when it comes to Greenland, to stay as safe as possible. But again, I never comment when there are discussions between allies.
You know, I'm doing my best.
So we agree. But I can tell you that when we talk about the security of the Arctic region, there is no disagreement within the alliance when it comes to that issue. And that is not only pertaining to the 7 who border on the Arctic, that's also true for other allies who are very much involved here. You have seen comments from the Brits and from the Germans who all want to help here to make sure that the Arctic region, that is US, Canada and Europe, stay safe.
Well, I was just going to follow up. If you wanted to make any announcement that there's going to be something like an Arctic Sentry mission, it would be a good place to do it. You know, you had Baltic Sentry, Eastern Sentry when the need was acute. I mean, do you expect Arctic Sentry or Greenland Sentry to be stood up?
What I expect over the coming weeks is discussions how we will take the next step, and the next step has to be about given the fact that we come to the same analysis, all NATO allies, and had a very good discussion on this around summer. We had a first debate again, it was now, I think, last week in the North Atlantic Council on what the next step should be. And we are now working on that with all allies involved, particularly, of course, the 7 who are bordering on the Arctic.
I'm not allowed to take all the questions for myself because I would, but I do have to open to discussion, and hopefully some of them will follow up on some of this. And when I call on you, please stand up, and because I don't know where everyone is sitting that is going to get a question. First, MEP is Dan Barna. There you go, Dan.
Thank you. Thank you.
And we have the Secretary General until 4 o'clock. He's given us some extra time, so let's do our best.
Thank you. Thank you, Mark. Thank you. Nice to see you here. Following the January 6th summit you have mentioned in your speech, how does NATO assess the genuine credibility of security guarantees that rely primarily on European force projections without direct troop commitment of the United States? Specifically, does shifting the burden of enforcement to a coalition within the alliance risk creating a 2-tier NATO that emboldens Russia to test these new boundaries? This is the first question. The second one is something on everyone's lips. We hear about NATO's future and role in academia, in media, and of course in politics. I grew up in Romania when NATO was just a dream and then became a reality. And now I see doubts and fears cast shadow on this reality. So allow me to be very blunt. Are you the last Secretary General of NATO?
So you thought I would be provocative. So,
I was not planning to quit already, but I'm sure there will be a successor someday. I have no idea, by the way, how long I will be in this job because nobody told me. But
and you never know, as we saw with Stoltenberg.
Yeah, you
right?
never know, and there needs to be unanimity on a successor. But I never got a contract or whatever, so I have no idea for how long I've been appointed. But I'm thoroughly enjoying the role and the job, and I feel it's really important. And there is a lot of support. Not for me personally, that's not important, but for the collective endeavor as NATO. And I'm so happy what you're from Romania and what you just mentioned. And I think it is totally true that NATO is crucial. Can we only, I mean, I was born in 1967 and I was raised with the idea that Nicolae Ceausescu would forever rule Romania. And now Romania is in the EU, Romania is in NATO. These are some of the big events of history. Let's never forget what we collectively went through and how important that is. Now, NATO is strong, and I think because of the decisions in The Hague during the NATO summit, it is even stronger. Because finally now we have decided to spend what is needed to protect ourselves based on an assessment of all the defense needs we collectively have. And by doing that, we are also equalizing our spending with the United States, which was since Eisenhower debate, the fact that the US was spending so much more than the Europeans and the Canadians, and now we are equalizing. I think that's great news. On your first question, it is a little bit different. When you look at the meeting in Paris last week, what came out of that meeting is a three-level approach when it comes to security guarantees for Ukraine. Level one is the Ukrainian armed forces. They will be, of course, the first line of defense, as in every country, defending themselves. The second element of security guarantees will be what is called the coalition of the willing, being brought together by Keir Starmer and President Macron of France, Emmanuel Macron, many countries working together, providing security guarantees for Ukraine, including training the Ukrainian armed forces and whatever is necessary to make sure that Ukraine can defend itself. But there is a third element, and the third element is the United States. The United States is now completely involved. And that involvement of the United States in securing the security guarantees is really extremely important. So that means that you now have a package in place which is almost done. We have to nail the final details. But that will provide a situation where if Russia would ever think of attacking again post a long-term ceasefire or a peace deal, they will only think of this a couple of minutes and then let go, because they know the situation has changed dramatically since Minsk, and the reaction will be devastating. They will not do it.
Okay. All right, take a drink of water because I'm calling on a Danish MEP.
Oh, is that?
Stina Boss.
Okay. Thank you very much, and thank you for being here with us today. And allow me to address you as the guy who's looking after all of us. And I just want you to notice, and I'm sure you have noticed it because it's been all over the place, that the people of Greenland, it's 56,000 people, are scared stiff. They're stressed, and they're more than just worried. You have put now also out there all the truths about Denmark has invested. We are all parts of NATO. We are all talking together. And yet, we have already an agreement. It's from 1951, you know that as well, between Denmark, the Kingdom of Denmark, and the US, allowing the US to deploy all the military forces they want. They had more than 1,000. Now they have 200. There are not one single Chinese or Russian ship around Greenland. Let that be stated as a fact. And there are, of course, also now conversations going on to try and make this go in a direction where we as allies, and I and my country and all the people in Greenland strongly believe that we are allies and that you are there to protect us. But please give us an indication of what can this alliance do if two parts two countries within the alliance cannot agree. Thank you.
Yes, but Thank you so much for that very well put question. But you have to respect the fact that when there are discussions between allies, my role has to be to make sure we solve issues. And when it comes to the protection of the High North, that is my role. I can never comment on that. That's impossible in public. And what I'm doing, and with the US and Canada and all our allies in Europe, is to make sure that we not only concentrate about Greenland. This is an issue about the High North. This is an issue about the Arctic territory. Let's not be naive. Even if there are not that many ships sailing at the moment, we know that with the sea lanes opening up in the High North and the Arctic, and this is not only true for Greenland, this is true for the whole Arctic area. It's not only Russia active there, it is increasingly also China being active there. So when it comes to the Arctic region, we have to work together as an alliance, and that's exactly what we are doing, and we are now putting more details to the next step to make sure that we indeed can do that as a collective alliance. You can be sure of that.
But is it, sir, is it unthinkable, as unimaginable, the words we used to use, that one ally could take up arms against another inside NATO?
Again, my role as Secretary General, I'm very clear. I never ever comment when there are discussions within the alliance. We have discussions between Greece and Turkey. We have had discussions between other allies. What you then will see all my predecessors do, and myself, is never comment on that in public. You work behind the scenes, and when it comes to the issue at stake here, and I believe there is a bigger issue at stake here, and that is the defense of the High North, the defense of the Arctic area, there you can be sure that we do everything to protect the whole of the alliance. That's my role, to keep 1 billion people safe. And that is not only the eastern flank and the US and the southern flank, that is also the Arctic area.
You might want to take another drink, because I'm calling on Andrew. Andrew Gray from Reuters, please. Stand up. He's way in the back. He's back there. You know him. There he is.
Thank you, Andrew Gray from Reuters, Secretary General. I will keep this one short. I'm not asking you to comment on specific discussions, as you've already made clear that you won't do that. But in general, is it acceptable for one NATO ally to threaten the use of force to take the territory of another?
I think it's the same question in another. So I refer to the previous answer.
Oh, that was it? Okay. All right, this is going well. Okay, next on my list is Malik Azmani.
Yes, well, dear Mark, it's quite strange, of course, to put also questions, because we have, of course, also some...
You're party colleagues, so...
yeah, party colleagues.
I planted this question, no, I didn't.
Yeah.
Well, fair enough then, I planted Andrew.
When you hear the question, Mark, it could be that people are thinking it, because I want to touch on another subject, and that is the situation in Iran. I would like to ask you about the shocking situation, of course, what we see with peaceful protesters are facing violent crackdowns, people are dying, and the only thing what they want is freedom. And I was wondering, how do you assess the current situation in Iran? What is your take also on the ongoing protest? Thank you.
Yeah, thank you for that question. And of course, as NATO, we concentrate on the North Atlantic area. But let me try to answer the questions despite the fact that it's outside NATO territory. Because I think, and I hope we all agree, that what is happening in Iran is repellent. What the leadership is doing against its own population. People protesting peacefully to make their views clear. And let's not forget, democracy is not only parliaments. Yes, parliaments are very important, I can tell you. But it is not only parliaments. Democracy is parliaments, plus free media, plus the right to protest and to make your views known. This oppressive regime in Tehran is now applying massive force and massive violence against its own population. There are many reports of many people dying. I find it repellent. I can assure you that NATO allies are day in, day out navigating this crisis, in constant touch on this. But I think we can all agree that we wish the best for Iran, and particularly not for the leadership, but for the Iranian people.
Okay, I'm going to go back to the journalist row. Mina from Liga in Ukraine. I can't, it's very hard to see out there, sorry. Stand up, please, Mina.
Thank you so much for this opportunity. Milana Golovany from Ukrainian media outlet Liga.net. Secretary General, after the Orishnik ballistic missile hit on Lviv, the fire was visible near the Russian border. If Russia attack with the same missile NATO territory tomorrow, will NATO respond?
Yes, but we also respond now, because this is already terrible. These Russian missiles are weapons of death and mass and destruction. And we have seen this now when they were used on Lviv the other day. And I find this terrible. We have seen last night, again, hundreds of drones and tens of missiles hitting Ukraine. And particularly now hitting the civilian infrastructure, innocent civilians. This has nothing to do with the combat on the front line. This is just creating panic and death among the general Ukrainian population. And it is evidence of the atrocities the Russians are willing to go to. So that is why I'm so inspired to try to do everything to make sure you guys have the interceptors necessary to take out the missiles wherever you can. And please, also here to the parliamentarians, work with your governments to dig deep in your stockpiles and to find the necessary interceptors for Patriot system, for NASAM system, for SAM-T systems, because they are urgently needed by the Ukrainians. This is why I agreed with President Trump on this Pearl initiative in July, because yes, Europe has a lot, but after 3-4 years of war, a lot of the stockpiles in Europe have been depleted, so we have to rely more on what is still in the stockpiles in the United States, and there's still, luckily, a lot left there, and that's crucial for Ukraine, paid for by European and Canadian allies. That's this Pearl initiative. This is why we are doing that. Because your fight is our fight. You have to survive this war. We have to make sure that we can end this war as soon as possible and get to a full peace deal, or if necessary, a long-term ceasefire, and to stop the fighting and the killing. By the way, let's not forget that the Russians at the moment are losing massive amounts of their soldiers thanks to the Ukrainian defense, the staunch Ukrainian defense. In months, this is 20 to 25,000 Russians dead. I'm not talking seriously wounded, killed, dead. 20 to 25,000 a month. When you compare that to the Afghan war in the 1980s, they lost 20,000 in 10 years. Now they lose these amounts and more in 1 month. So that's also unsustainable on their side. But you can be assured that that is why I'm so much motivated to work with President Zelensky and European and Canadian and US allies to make sure you've got what you need to keep yourself strong in the fight, but also strong in the negotiating table.
Mr. Secretary General, does Ukraine need to win the war, not just survive it?
I mean, when you look at the moment, I think we have to bring Ukraine to a place where the president knows that security guarantees are in place, that the Russians will never attack again. But that then will lead to a very sensitive discussion about territory. And the sensitive discussion about territory is something only the Ukrainian people can decide. That's not for me to decide. But for the Ukrainian president and the Ukrainian leadership to be able to strike a deal one day with the Russians, hopefully. If the Russians come to the table and are willing to play ball, which they are not at the moment. Their reaction to the meeting in Paris was this Oreshnik missile, you could argue. So they are clearly at this moment not serious about negotiating. But we have to make sure the moment that these talks start, that the Ukrainian leadership has the guarantee that the security guarantees are in place so that the Russians will never try to attack again.
Okay, I have 3 more MEPs and 8 minutes. Hille Voutmans. I don't usually like your short answers when but this time it's working out.
Well, thank you very much, and good to see you here, Mark, Secretary General. Goed u te zien hier. Ik moet u wel zeggen, ik vond.
It's great to see you here. I must say that as a Dutch leader, you did dare to say more.
Questions here, because that's the role also of the Parliament. We in this parliament are very worried by some declarations. About some declarations of the US president. I cannot repeat them here, but we're very worried. The European citizens ask us really, take care of our security. Stine told you, you're the man we rely on for our security. But I think we should rely more on European security, on European countries who work together. Because you say, invest 5%. But if countries will do that at the same way they're doing, I don't think it will help a lot. So my question is very open and clear. How do you work towards a European pillar in NATO? How can we do that? Because European citizens ask us that. Be strategic autonomous. And personally, and my colleagues know that, I even go a step further. I really want a European army. And that's also what the citizens want in the future. But help us to create that European pillar, and what can we do in this parliament to help you to create that in NATO? Thank you very much, Mark. Thank you.
Good to answer that question, but I'm afraid I do not completely agree with the assessment or the solution. But you want me to be straightforward, so let me be straightforward, as we always do. First of all, let's not forget that in Europe, we reaped a peace dividend after the fall of the Berlin Wall, which was too big in hindsight. And therefore we have underinvested in our European armed forces. This is true for basically every European country, except maybe for Poland and the Baltics. That's fact number one. Fact number two is that I strongly believe that the transatlantic relationship with the United States, with Canada, is crucial, not only today, but also in the long term. And by the way, and I'm going to defend President Trump. I am absolutely convinced. Who is here from Spain, who is here from Italy, from Belgium, from other countries, not nearly at 2% at the beginning of last year. All these countries have now reached 2%. Do you really believe you would have done that if Trump would not have been elected as President of the United States? No way you would have done that. And you had to do that not because of Trump, but because of your own security. Then the Hague Summit. Do you really believe, without President Trump, we would ever have agreed to spend in 2035, with a credible path together, 3.5% on core defense, 5% on overall defense? If he would not have been elected, no way we would have done it. And we have to do it not because of President Trump, but because, based on the analysis of our security and our defense plans, this is the minimum amount we need to spend to make sure we stay ahead of the Russians, we stay ahead of the Chinese, and stay ahead of the Chinese, the Russians, Iran, and North Korea working together. So I'm fine with everybody criticizing leaders within NATO. That's democracy. But I would just ask us to concentrate on the facts. And the fact says that without President Trump, we would have not taken those decisions. These 8-9 countries, not on 2%. On 2% late last year. And the whole of the alliance committing to 5% defense spending, I would say that is thanks to President Trump. And I know you will all hate me now saying this, but this is what I believe. And I'm going to repeat that. And that's why we need a transatlantic relationship. And then on Europe. Europe is crucial. Europe is crucial. When I came in, I visited Ursula von der Leyen and we had a meeting, and it was fantastic because she was defense minister before. She knows everything. And she knows exactly the division of labor, that NATO is good at command and control and standards and capability targets, and that the EU has the convening power, the power to get like the 800 billion and 150 billion for SAFE. But also when it comes to the internal market, all the soft power the EU can muster. Why we have the European Union. And that working together is a very strong formula. So if we are going to repeat structures, command and control structures, and you have a whole hierarchy of European generals, we find it difficult today to fill all the senior officer positions within NATO. If you then have to replicate that on the European side, forget that you can ever do that. And the Russians will love it, because it is more complexity on our side, more time to debate, more discussions, whilst they try to attack us. And let's not forget, our security service are telling us that by 27, 29 or 31, the Russians are ready to try something against us. At least they have the capability to do it. And my worry is if China would move on Taiwan, they will never do this alone. They will always force their junior partner, being one Vladimir Putin in Moscow, to move against us. And we have to be ready. And I would say let's be thankful for what Trump did, really encouraging us, maybe even stronger than encouraging us, to get to this 2%. For Belgium, 4 billion more than what you guys spent at the beginning of the year, thanks to Theo Franke and Bart de Wever and the coalition in the ruling Belgium at the moment. This is great news.
Okay, I've got two more. Marie-Agnes Strack-Zimmerman and Nathalie Loiseau is going to ask as well. Sorry.
Sorry.
Can I take you two together because we've got a couple?
Yes, yes, of course.
Just maybe
okay. Welcome.
I'm 5 or 10 minutes more.
Okay.
Welcome on this side of the town. Tell your people in NATO we are not far away from NATO, so they are all welcome. Okay.
It's a 20-minute drive.
Yes. Just a question coming back to Greenland. In September there was a NATO exercise, Arctic Light, and we were observer with some colleagues. We traveled to Greenland, but without the US. Why? Because we are, I hope so, still partners.
Hey, but here, of course, the Danish question was interesting, referring back to the 1951 treaty between Denmark and the United States. I think you said over 1,000. I believe the US had at one point thousands of Americans present in Greenland. At the moment, it's 150 on a rotational basis. And Denmark is completely relaxed about the fact that the US might in the future have much more presence in Greenland than they have at the moment.
Which begs the question of why Trump is making these threats.
And that is why I tell you that it is so good that as an alliance, we not only concentrate on Greenland, we concentrate on the whole of the High North. Because this is not only Greenland, this is also Iceland, this is Finland, this is Norway, this is Sweden, this is Canada, this is the United States. It is making sure that the whole of the Arctic area is safe. And we always look at the map, of course, the Mercator map as we have it since 1600, as we see it. But when you look at it from above, you can see the threats which might emerge if these sea lanes open up in the coming years.
Okay, she's not happy with that.
Well,
but we're running out of time.
I cannot leave this room if you're not happy. That's the deal.
Oh.
Yeah, but not in all exercises, all nations always participate. But the US is really very active in many exercises in Europe and of course in NATO territory.
All right, Natalie, it's up to you.
So I'm not going to torture you, Mr. Secretary General, about Greenland or about Donald Trump. I want to tease you about something that's happening within NATO under your leadership. Before, there was a strong commitment of NATO to fight against FIMIs, disinformation, information manipulation. I haven't heard or I haven't noticed that FIMIs are decreasing worldwide, coming from Russia, but also from other nations like Iran or China.
So Natalie,
why
just for the
on
audience,
earth...
foreign interference and manipulation.
Yes, so why on earth is NATO decreasing its efforts to fight against information manipulation right now?
Well, let me tell you, what we are doing is mainstreaming all this work, basically when it comes to hybrid, cyber, misinformation, everything. We have mainstreamed this because as an alliance, and this is true for each of the individual allies, it's also true for the alliance as a whole, we have to step up and to make sure that when it comes to cyber, hybrid, etc., we have to be the best in class. And that's exactly what we are doing. Of course, the Russians love us to talk about that, so I don't do this the whole day, but I can assure you that all allies are working at this extremely hard to make sure we not only can defend ourselves in the conventional way, but also when it comes to this broader hybrid and cyber domain.
And can you assure everyone that despite the reorganization at NATO headquarters, that this has not been kicked down the priority list?
What we have done in the reorganization at NATO headquarters is we have mainstreamed everything. Because what I always hated when I was in national government, that you would have one minister responsible, for example, for women affairs or for some other specific issue. And then the rest of the cabinet would say, yeah, but he or she is responsible for this, so we don't have to care. And what we have done in the reorganization is to mainstream all these activities and work streams.
Because the cognitive domain is definitely a warfare domain these days, isn't it?
Everything we do. It is all interlinked, so
yeah.
you cannot separate the one from the other.
All right, well, this is, I'm getting the signal that I have to wrap up. Thank you so much for the extra time, Mr. Secretary General. That was really a treat, and I think this was really a conversation that we needed to have to start off 2026. Everybody's wondering about this, and Valérie is going to come back. Yes, and I'm going to let you go. Thank you. I am. Okay, you're going to stick around? Thank you so much. Thanks. No, it was a pleasure.